Hey everyone, Warwick's here. So we've had the new alpha phase is dropping. I think it's out today as I record this, the 23rd of October. And there's a lot of changes that have been happening in this. So we're going to go over kind of broadly a lot of the changes, but dive in deep on a few specific classes that I've been kind of tracking throughout this alpha cycle. But first I want to talk about this blue post that came from Kyvax, who's we've seen recently in a couple of interviews. So basically they're talking about interrupts and then diminishing returns. Diminishing returns is just kind of a reminder of what they did at the beginning of the alpha phase, which is basically made DR so that in PvE a mob will never go fully immune. And then they're reducing the amount of time it takes for a diminishing return to reset. So not big there, but this is the one that I want to kind of start with. So interrupts. At the beginning of the Midnight Alpha, we made a change to all interrupt abilities players have, increasing the interrupt duration by 2 seconds each. This change should make interrupt effects more effective when trying to shut down an enemy caster or have them move closer to engage in melee. Healing can be a stressful one when you must manage several things at once: your own healing abilities, your team's health, and the enemy's actions. We feel that asking the healer to monitor the cast bars of things they don't have targeted while properly using their interrupts was asking too much. In the Midnight Alpha this week, we removed access to interrupts from all healer specialization except Restoration Shaman. These talents will be replaced with other talent nodes for healer specializations in a future build. We recognize the significant loss of utility in some circumstances and want to make sure that that content available to a healer is still completable, especially considering solo experiences such as special delve, boss encounters, or other solo healing experiences. Restoration Shaman keeps wind shear, but it is increased to 30 seconds. We feel like having different capabilities to feel wind shear is an important part of Restoration Shaman's toolkit. So, priests no longer can bitch about being the only healer with a kick. They can now all bitch at Restoration Shaman about being the only healer with an actual interrupt. My opinion on this is twofold. I think this is a little bit short-sighted because, like, one of the things that they mentioned here is that monitor the cast bars of things they don't have targeted while properly using their interrupts was asking too much. I don't think they realize how many players use mouse over, either their built-in own one or the click add-on. Because, like, I know when I'm healing on my Press Evoker, like, the amount of times I actually click someone's, like, frame and then cast a heal on them and then have to tab back to try and kick something is, like, super rare. Whether it's on Mistweaver, whether it's on Preservation Evoker, which are the only two healers I've played extensively this expansion. If anything, I think a healer that can effectively kick is, like, a form of skill expression. And the other thing that would have to happen then is that if you're removing some of the utility of kick, then you would want to add in things like damage to give them a compensation for contributing factor to particularly a Mythic Plus group. Because that's all this really interrupts. Kind of PvP as well, but I'm not anywhere near enough of versed on PvP to be able to make any sort of proper judgment on that. But a Mythic Plus, like, this is a kind of a big loss because you used to be able to rotate and heal the kicks. Now they've done a lot better over time where you can have your tank and 3 DPS just kind of be the ones to be the kick rotation. But, like, for example, my Resto Shaman that I've run with all the way up to almost 3,200 now, she's one of our highest interrupts. Usually, right, her and I are competing for most interrupts in a key. And I haven't asked her specifically, but I mean, it sounds like something that she feels like she enjoys. Obviously, she wouldn't be doing it so much. And she uses, my understanding, is a lot of mouse over macro or quick key binding type stuff to be able to heal, just like I do. So I think this is probably a little bit short-sighted because, like, the number of people that click on a target and then heal is pretty rare. Now, I've seen some high-end players that do heal this way, and they're pretty successful. They are always in that title range or on the border of title range every year as a healer, or most seasons as a healer. So, like, it's possible, but I don't think that people are, like, you're removing skill ceiling to raise the skill floor, and I don't think that's ever a good idea in your game. Like, raising the skill the skill floor, I'm always down for. Like, making things easier for the players that are new to the role or don't invest a ton of time into the game and they just play it because they enjoy the game, they enjoy the world, they enjoy maybe one specific healer or whatever the case may be. Removing their ability to contribute in various ways, I think, is weird, because like, your tank obviously contributes by staying alive, doing as much damage as possible, and then they are the primary mob control in majority of key groups. Your damage dealers contribute by primarily doing damage, and then they're generally secondarily responsible for mob control, and then staying alive is their third prio usually. This basically makes it so that healers are either healing or doing damage. And to me, that doesn't seem fair to healers that enjoy a varied gameplay style. Like, I love on my Preservation Evoker, you know, darting around with Verdant Embrace and positioning for big Dream Breaths and stuff like that, and then also trying to get off a big Deep Breath to stun the mobs. Excuse me, a landslide to root mobs, or getting, you know, that big Fire Breath off to do some good upfront damage, and then followed by, you know, disintegrates and single target to help funnel down a priority target, that sort of thing. Like, I love that form of gameplay, and for that to be removed a little bit feels kind of bad. I hope this is only just like, hey, we're checking, we want to, like, they make it seem like this is something that they're already like, hey, we're confirmed to. I don't like that. I think they should say, hey, we want to try this and see how it feels. You know, we want players to see how this feels, see how it impacts your dungeon runs and stuff like that. Give us feedback, and then we'll reevaluate. That's what I think they should have said here at the end. You know, they should have added another paragraph. This is not a set in stone change. However, we want to test this during the alpha cycle to get a feel for how it impacts the game overall, and are encouraging player feedback in order to help us gather as much data as possible. Something like that. But the fact that they kind of say like this right here, to me, says that they've kind of like doubled down on this. Enemy behavior. So this is something that like not a ton of people care about, but if you play Mythic Plus keys at a decent level, like I'm doing 14, 15s, where it starts to really matter. They are kind of adjusting for the fact that they're removing healer interrupts. So we're making a change. The behavior of enemies to use spell like Shoot or Frostbolt. When you bump these enemies to have these spells more evenly spread their targeting to different players in your group, which should reduce cases where a single player might take a large spike of damage while others receive none. And then they have more to come for classes in Midnight Testing. We'll continue to outline all this in development notes with each new build. So basically what they're trying to do is they don't want people to like... There's two scenarios that feel really, really bad as a DPS and as a healer, where when you have a, say like a, you know, a Web Bolt cast, and you have like 3 mobs that cast Web Bolt, and say you accidentally overlap your kicks on one of them. So only one of them gets kicked, but the other 2 are targeting the exact same player. That player either has to defensive or they die. Now that's part of that is how they design damage intake, but part of that is also like, in what world should enemy mobs, like, I mean, I know logically and strategically, like, hey, pick a target, mow it down. Like, we do that as players. But from a feel standpoint for players, like, that's not fun. So, like, if you have 3 mobs that cast Web Bolt, it should target 3 different people. And that way you might see, like, oh, that one's targeting the tank, this one's targeting, you know, the Death Knight that can AMS it, and then this one is targeting, like, your healer. Okay, we definitely want to kick that healer one. And then maybe the other 2, if they go off, like, you know, one's on the tank, who cares? He's getting healed all the time anyways. And the other one's on a sturdy DPS that's, like, got tools in their bag to either quickly heal up themselves through, like, say, Death Strike or, you know, Impending Victory like I have on my Warrior. Or I can leech it back through my Demon Hunter, or Predatory Swiftness Regrowths, which aren't great, but it's something on Feral Druid. 3 primary DPS specs that I play. And so, and then, or you can just like, hey, here's another heal. But like, the problem right now is that like, if they take a Web Bolt, they go down to 50% of their health. Like, you have to burst heal them back, otherwise there's a chance they die. hopefully with this new enemy behavior, it makes it so that the damage feels a little bit more attrition-like. And so you can do more like slow and steady healing. So like if you're a Resto Druid in that situation and your DK gets chunked, you can throw like maybe a regrowth rejuve on it, on that character, and just let it heal up naturally, knowing that, hey, they just got targeted, the other 2 mobs most likely aren't going to target them. That sort of thing. Hopefully they create some good intended behavior with the AI behind the games, but we'll see. AI and Blizzard's AI for their enemies has never been like huge. But let me know what you think about this. I'm not a fan. I think they should, like, hey, we want to test this to see how it feels. They should be. They definitely should have stated, hey, we're open to reversing this change. But this tells me that they're not. They've already dug their heels in, which is a classic Blizzard move. They're in a literal testing cycle, and they're digging their heels in on a change that they haven't really consulted with the player base or gotten feedback from the player base on how it feels. That's what this feels like. So. Alright, from a class change perspective, this video is probably going to be a little bit long, so I'll try to chapter all this shit out so you can kind of watch whatever you want to watch. They buffed and made adjustments to a bunch of tier sets. It's still super early for me to care about this. And none of the specs that I'm considering playing got changed, so fuck it, I don't care. Some small things, battle res spells, so rebirth, raise ally, redemption, or redemption, whatever it's called, will now highlight on the default raid frames, which is good. And then you'll also get a highlight on a player that doesn't have like Battle Shout or Mark of the Wild or Arcane Intellect. So that's nice little like quality of life things that you can look down at your part of your raid frames and it'll highlight around it, saying, hey, you need to buff them. That's cool. Alright, not a lot of changes for Death Knight this time. They only just updated the Reaping secondary effect for Unholy. I haven't messed with this. I haven't dug into the Unholy changes. I just know it got reworked. I want to dive into this and watch some people do it because I've always had a soft spot for Unholy DK. So I don't know what this means or if it's any good on this. Alright. Eldrazi Reaver got its expanded row of hero talents added in. So Broken Spirit, so the hunt, so Eldrazi Reaver, this is for Vengeance and Havoc. So the Hunt, Sigil of Spite, shatters a soul fragment. Chaos Strike and Soul Cleave have a 20% chance to shatter a soul fragment. That's actually pretty good for both, because like Eldrazi Reaver, one of the things that you rely on for Havoc is pulling in your souls to stack up your Reaper's Glaive. So having more access to soul fragments or soul, lesser soul fragments, whatever, soul fragments now, in order to, and this is one of the classes I'm going to dive in deep by the way. I think that's a good thing to proc Reaper's Glaive more often, because like one thing I've noticed playing a lot of M+ lately is that with Demon Hunter, because I'm strongly considering Demon Hunter as a main for next expansion beyond just new spec. Like I love Havoc and Vengeance changes to me are actually like piquing my interest in the spec. Alright, Keen Edge. Reaper's Glaive damage is increased by 20%, and other physical-only damage is increased by 10%. That second one is a little bit weird, because there's not a lot of physical-only damage in either kit. It's like Soul Cleave and Chaos Strike, I think, is the only thing. And even then, Chaos Strike is like half Chaos, half physical, I think. So, interesting. Probably fine. Reaper Glaive damage increase is good, though. Bladecraft. Fear of the Eldrazi further empowers Blade Dance and Soul Cleave when cast after a Chaos Strike or a Fracture, increasing slashes to 12. Reaver's Mark now stacks up to 3 times and further empowers Chaos Strike Fractures when cast after Blade Dance, Soul Cleave, applying additional stuff. Okay, hang on. Let me look at this just from the Fear, or for the Havoc perspective. The Fear of the Eldrazi empowers Blade Dance when cast after Chaos Strike, increasing slashes to 12. So okay, so let me look this up real quick. Fury of the Eldrazi, I'm like, my brain is not processing it real quick. Okay, so when enhanced by Reaver Glaive, okay, so this basically makes it so it's 3, now it's gonna be And it's 6 slashes if you're done after Chaos Strike, but now it's going to be double that to 12. Okay, that makes more sense. Let me look at this from a Vengeance standpoint, because we haven't played Eldrazi Vengeance in a while, so let's go talent builds. Okay, so same thing, like when you... So with Eldrazi Vengeance, you throw the glaive, you fracture, and then you soul cleave, it'll cast onto a bunch of different targets to ignore damage. Okay, that makes sense. And then Reaver Spark stacking up to 3 times is good because it means that further builders will... Okay, that makes sense. And then they made some adjustments in the tree in general. For Vengeance, Art of the Glaive is now granted by casting Sigil of Spite instead of the Hunt, since Vengeance no longer has access to the Hunt. Alright, and now it's Devour. Basically, they just made it so that it's now called Void's Guard instead of Felguard. Really, it's called Scarred. We'll see. Alright, Havoc Apex Talent. Very cool. Alright, Eternal Hunt. The Hunt empowers your next eye beam, increasing damage by 100% and affecting enemies in a wider area. So, right now, like, the line on is like, feels like it's like this big on the screen. It's only like, I think, 2 yards wide. Depending on what the wider area, if it's 5 yards, that makes it a lot better, I think. 8 yards, it's bananas. But hopefully it's like a 5-yard radius wide, because I think right now it's only like a 2-yard radius wide. But someone that really nerds out on Demon Hunter, please let me know. Alright, the second Apex talent points will be your 2-point talent, so it has a 30-second reduced cooldown, deals 30% more damage, and its damage over time effect applies 4 additional times. That's quite good. So right now the Hunt, as you can see here, well, that's for... Let's go back to Havoc. It's site running a little slow right now. So for Havoc, the Hunt basically does chaos damage on enemies in your path. So like the ideal usage for the Hunt has always been to charge the character in the back. I generally just use it to mainly proc Reaver's Glaive. But so it applies to additional enemies, so it's better AoE, but does more damage on the Hunt, which means it's going to be like a primary use it on cooldown type cooldown. And then Blade Dance damage increased by 20%. Fully channeling Eye-Beam causes your Blade Dance to refresh its own cooldown. So again, trying to prevent Eye-Beam clipping, because that's been a thing in the past. I really like this change, particularly when it comes to, like, if you can get a back-to-back Reaver's Glaive, you, like, Reaver's Glaive, and then you Eye-Beam to go into your meta form, because you still have Demonic. You Chaos Strike, and then you Blade Dance, and then that Blade Dance hits again, but maybe you proc your Reaver's Glaive again, so you throw your Reaver's Glaive again, Chaos Strike, and immediately you don't have to wait to Blade Dance. So in that little meta window, you can get a lot of damage out, potentially. And with it hitting, 12 times now with the Eldrazi talent updates, like, that could be really, really powerful. And then for Felguard, I still think it's really good, because, like, when you run the Felguard talent builds, like, your... not rotation. Shit. Talent builds. Take a look at your Felguard, it's like... There's something in here that does it with Blade Dance. Yeah, so here, like, Enduring Torment, gives you Blade Dance damage. And so, like, there is value in having, like, that Blade Dance. I think this favors Eldrazi a little bit more, but does have value for thing, because, like, it's proccing Demon Surges and having Blade Dance back-to-back is just good AoE. Eye-Beam cooldown is reduced to 30 seconds, but now the Cycle of Hatred talent that gives you Fury based on damage of your Eye-Beam. now will only reduce by 10 seconds instead of 20. So they reduce the CDR that you get on it, but they reduce the base cooldown on it. So I think it just makes it a little bit more consistent, lines it up a little bit better with, I think, your kind of a cycle of your ability. So I like this change, and then they just adjusted some talent positions in the tree. So overall, the Eldrazi Reaper talents I think are really good. I obviously would want to see how they play with Vengeance, because we haven't played Eldrazi Vengeance in a while. And then the Apex talents for Havoc I think are pretty good. Alright. They made a bunch of changes to Druid's Druid of the Claw tree. So there's a new talent there, Limb from Limb. Your auto attacks are 30% more likely to make your next bite or maul become Ravage. So, I mean, you get Ravage based off of auto attacks right now, so that's always a good thing. It's more of those. You have an 18% chance to follow up with any single target melee ability or raise with a Twin Claw, dealing higher physical damage and generating energy or rage. Okay. So that's going to be really good for Feral, because that means... Now, if Rake isn't cleave, that's probably going to be very much a single target one. I'm wondering if that's going to be a choice with Limb from Limb. Exacerbating wounds. Your dreadful wounds increase the damage afflicted enemies take from your bleed damage by 8 to 15%. So giving Druid of the Claw a little bit of bleed support I think is good. That makes talents that, like, where your bleed durations are extended, like, a lot more valuable. Strike for the Heart has been updated. For Feral, it makes it so that Shred, Swipe, and Rake damage are increased by 10%, and Crit Strike chance is increased by 8%. That's good. I like that. Feral thrives off of anything that impacts crit, so like, we love that. And then Mangle damage is increased by 20%, and its Critical Strike chance is increased by 10%, and it heals you for 5%. Holy shit. 5% heal on an ability that resets a ton? That's a lot of sustain for Guardian. Holy crap. Tear Down the Mighty has been updated. So Chomp and Feral Frenzy gets just a flat damage increase for Feral, and then Sundering Roar, which is a new roar they're getting, is reduced by 15 seconds. That's fine. Claw Rampage has been updated. The chance for various attacks to trigger Ravage reduced to 20% versus 25%, but because you are getting this, I think that probably balances out. Ravage has been updated, so 15, so like total you get like a big, almost 50% increased chance to get Ravages, which is good. Empowered Shapeshifting increases the damage of Shred and Swipe by 10% versus 6, good. And then the Ruthless Aggression Killing Strikes choice notice change positions, which just moved. Now for Guardian specifically, Wild Power Surge increases the damage of your next ferocious bite or rip by 50% when its bonus is active instead of 200%, so that's a big nerf to single target DPS for Guardian. Because what was happening is, what you would do is you would start in bear form. When you, I think it was mangle 6 times, you would then, and you weren't actively tanking, you would hit a Rake to drop into cat form with fluid form. You would already be at max combo points, and then you immediately hit a rip, and then you would either stay in that form if you needed to and just do a little bit of damage, or what I tended to do a lot is I would immediately mangle. I had a keybind set for just those 2 buttons. I would mangle to go back into bear form so that I could use something like my big Ravage. So, interesting. Elune's Chosen. So this is the balance and bear tree. I'm going to look at this more particularly from the bear perspective because I don't play Balance Druid. So Star Cascade gives Thrash a 50% chance to launch a Star Surge at a victim with 120% effectiveness. That's just the tier set for this current tier. That's fine. Lunar Beam increases arcane damage you deal by 10% while it is active. That's actually pretty good because Thrash becomes arcane damage with the current setup. And then, of course, you have Moonfires going out a lot. So that's just going to be nice. It's not a huge damage increase, but it is like something. You know, because like Thrash is like a good chunk of your damage, but it really enables other things in the kit. It's not your main damage dealer. I have to check my bear details. Alright, then Bask in Moonlight. Maul and Raise damage is increased by 10%. Lunar Beam's damage is dealt to its primary target increased by 30%. So I do like with the Guardian changes, one of the things that they're doing is making Maul and Raise part of the kit again, which I have been calling for this entire patch. Like, one of the things I don't like about Guardian Druid right now is that you never cast Maul and Raise. Like, I have it on my bars just out of old habit. It's been so long since I've actually touched that button. because Thorns of Iron does more damage, frankly. And Thorns of Iron has been removed. So you're back to not just spending rage solely on Iron Fur and getting good damage out of it. You're actually having to go back to weaving in like your Maul and your Razes, which is good. Alright. Chrono Warden hero talents for Evoker. Let's move on to them. Nostormu Adept. Temporal Anomaly, mana cost reduced by 15%, and the cooldown reduced by 4 seconds on, or Prescience cooldown reduced by 2 seconds, and it grants 1 additional percent critical strike chance, but Threads of Fate has been removed. The Temporal Anomaly mana cost reduction is huge, and the CDR on it is also huge, because one of the big things about Preservation Evoker Chrono Warden, Chrono Warden Pres Evoker, is that you're always trying to cycle your echoes, like, all the time. And Temporal Anomaly is one of the biggest ways that you actually cycle your echoes, because it applies to 5 targets, and when you're in a mythic raid scenario of 20 people, being able to get 4 seconds off that means you could potentially get 10 echoes out in a window before you would actually have to use it on an ability like Reversion or Verdant Embrace or Dream Breath or whatever. So I think that's actually pretty huge for Chrono Warden. It really makes theirs... they're still kind of a stacked cleave specialist healer, but it does give them a lot more AoE healing through things like Reversion, if Reversion has some power behind it. So I think that's good. And then obviously through Dream Breath with the doubling up on the hot means you just have this constant trickling of healing going out, so it works better against rot damage. Primacy also got a 15-second duration instead of 8. That's actually very good as well for Prez. So these some really nice. This is kind of a nice little buff to Chrono Warden Prez. Melt Armor and the damage from maneuverability now extends its duration when Deep Breath is cast multiple times when the effect is active. So yeah, they have a thing now where you can cast Deep Breath twice, kind of built into the Scale Commander Devastation tree. So they're just kind of adjusting that those talents to work with that new spec. Alright. Inner Radiance. Your Living Flame and Emerald Blossoms are 30% more effective on yourself. I think this talent is long overdue. Emerald Blossom for really for all 3 specs, this expansion has been kind of garbage. So making them a little bit more effective on yourself, I think, is good. And then, of course, they're doing steps in the Preservation class changes to make Blossom a little bit better. So I'm pretty happy about that. And then, of course, Quell. Move to the DPS specs. Alright. Imminent Destruction redesigned to make Essence cost of eruptions reduced by 1 and goes to your next 6 eruptions. That's pretty solid. Molten Embers has been redesigned. If enemies affected by fire breaths over time effect, take 25% increased damage from your black spells, so that'll be Eruption. And then Imposing Presence and Radiance have been removed. Okay, I think that's fine. Just little tiny adjustments, doing some power shifting, and adding a little bit more personal damage into Augmentation. They've been slowly working on making Augmentation like 60% personal damage, 40% support, which I think is probably the best role for it. Devastation. We're updating a couple specialization talents with the intent that they play more fluidly with other changes to the spec. Molten Embers and Imminent Destruction required delaying us the second Deep Breath from Strafing Run, but we'd like for you to choose the best moment when to use it instead. So we're updating them to be more beneficial whether you use them back to back or to wait. Scorching Embers has been adjusted to simplify its interaction with the new Consume Flame mechanic. Our intent is that you are maintaining a fire breath on your target as Flame Shaper regardless of the empower level needed to do so. Interesting. Okay. Well, let's look at their Apex talent. Rising Fury. While Dragon Rage is active, you gain Rising Fury every 6 seconds, increasing your haste by 4%, stacking up to 5 times. So, if you get enough extensions on your Dragon Rage, you can get like a pseudo Bloodlust. Pretty good. And then when you hit the 5 stacks, you'll gain 15% extra spell damage. And then when Dragon Rage ends, you'll also gain that Risen Fury for 4 seconds per stack. So if you get 5 stacks, that'll be 20 seconds. Which grants the damage and haste bonuses accumulated from Rising Fury and generates Essence Burst every 4 seconds. So I really like this Apex talent. Now, I've talked about in the past how I don't like Apex talents leaning into heavy cooldowns, but what this is doing is this is taking your cooldown, making it a little bit better, and then giving you some cool benefits afterwards so that the drop off from the damage you do during Dragon Fury or Dragon Rage to the damage you do outside of Dragon Rage doesn't feel as steep. It's like a more like stable slope down. So I really like this. This feels like it's going to favor I mean, it doesn't really favor either one, honestly. Like, I'm a personal fan of Scale Commander, but we'll see. Alright, so Deep Breath reduces the SS cost of your next 4 Disintegrator Pyros by 1, stacking up to 8 times. That is really good. Scorching Embers has been redesigned. Enemies affected by your fire breath damage over time effect take 25% increased damage from your red spells, which is Living Flame and Pyre. And of course, Quell was moved in. Alright, Wings of Liberty now gives a second charge to Verdant Embrace. That's good. Tempo charge has been redesigned. Just makes your healing and absorption spells increase by 15%. It's much more flat, but I think it's much easier to tune versus what we had now. Lifebind duration increased to 8 seconds is very good because they're making Lifebind much more important, especially since they're removing Spirit Bloom. And then Temporal Anomaly radius was increased to 12. Oh wow! So combined with the now Stormwind Adept, like Temporal Anomaly is going to be a huge part of Preservation's kit in general now, which I like. I love Temporal Anomaly. Little shield, throwing out echoes, good stuff. All right, Hunters. Let's go on to you guys now. So some hero talent adjustments. Beast Mastery Dark Ranger is getting a duration reduction to 10 seconds, and it triggers from Bestial Wrath instead of Bloodshed. For Sentinel, Stalk and Strike no longer applies Sentinel's Mark, but for Survival specifically, talks about Tip of the Spear consumption, which I don't look too deep into Survival. I've always had a soft spot for Survival, but I haven't looked into the changes too much. So I don't know what these changes do. If you're a Survival Hunter lover, let me know. Alright. So they're giving it a choice node with Roar of Sacrifice. Makes it so that your pet will always receive damage, basically. So you're gonna have to, like, my only concern about this is that, like, they're talking about not wanting to add the keybind, but you kind of are, because now you're doing Men Pet. Like, you're weaving Men Pet into the thing. And then Lone Survivor got a increase from 2 seconds, or reduction rather, from 4 seconds to 2 seconds. Alright, so Bloodshed has been updated. So Bestial Wrath provokes your Pex to tear into your target, causing your target to bleed for heavy damage. Damage from Bloodshed has a 10% chance to summon a dire beast. So that's now a passive ability. Its own button, so we're folding its behaviors into Bestial Wrath, and we'll tune around its increased frequency. Dark Ranger nodes that previously keyed into Bloodshed will now affect Bestial Wrath. So that explains these hero talents. Okay. My concern is that Beast Mastery is becoming like a very heavy cooldown based spec between Call of the Wild and Bestial Wrath, like doing damage outside of it. I'm a little concerned. Wild Thrash has been updated, now charges to your target and delays the spellcast until the pet reaches its target. Interesting. That's probably just like a behavior update. Then Solitary Companion has returned. Your pet damage is increased by 35%, and your pet size is increased by 10%. This is a choice node with Animal Companion, so Beastmaster Honor's long time thing now, I think really since it got buffed like in mid-BFA, has been that you have 2 pets, but there are still people that love the BM fantasy of a single pet. This now has allowed that to come back, but is it gonna, the question has always been, is it a DPS loss? And we don't know. Alright. Following changes are targeted, adding a layer of depth to Survival's gameplay by reintroducing Tip of the Spear. Okay, so that explains, again, these things. This is why you keep reading notes. Alright. Alongside this reintroduction, we'll be including a new suite of Tip of the Spear-centric talents. Additionally, we're reworking a portion of Sentinel's talents to key into Tip of the Spear directly. We're making Boomstick easier to access and granting more CDR via quick reload and lethal calibration so that players will have more reliably have access to its area damage. We'd still like Survival's area damage events to be sparser and higher impact, but we agree with the community that it felt too infrequent. We appreciate your continued feedback and we'll continue to iterate as necessary. So shout outs to the Survival Hunter, like all like 10 of you that play the spec ardently, like they're listening. I personally like the Tip of the Spear interaction. It makes the spec come away from being so haste interactive and being more like a crit mastery spec right now, which I think is good. Now, if they would just get rid of Mongoose Bite, I kind of hate Mongoose Bite. Alright, I know there are people that love it. I hate it. Alright, so new talent, Quick Reload. So just reduces Boomstick's cooldown by 30 seconds. I think that's the old Fury of the Eagle. Primal Surge. Kill command increases, gives additional Tip of the Spear stacks, and then also more bonus damage. Cool. Twin Fangs takedown grants 3 tips to the spear. Nice. Tip of the spear has been updated. Kill command increases the damage of your other spells by 15%, stacking up to 3 times. Now, they said this is stacking up to 3 times. It does not mean it's 45% damage reduction. It's 15% that you get 3 times. At least that's how it works currently. Alright. Strike is 1 has been updated, so consuming a tip of the spear provokes your pack to attack, dealing more physical damage, so you get kind of like an echo damage on it. Explosive Echo has been updated to benefit Boomstick. Wildfire Tar has been updated to increase Wildfire Bomb's periodic damage, and no longer increases bet damage to enemies affected by Wildfire Bomb. I actually really like that change. Wildfire Bomb to me should be like the thing that you build the entire spec around in a lot of ways, and Tip of the Spear. So making Wildfire Bomb feel like a potent ability, whether when you initially throw it and when you do the damage over it, we're good. I still miss Wildfire Infusion. Wildfire Shells have been updated. Wildfire Bomb cooldown reduction reduced to 2 seconds, well, that's 4 seconds. That's probably fine. Lethal Calibration. Wildfire Bomb reduces the cooldown of Boomstick by 1 second for each enemy's hit, so you get like a flat 30-second cooldown plus 5 seconds of cooldown for every bomb you throw. Means Boomstick's gonna be up a lot. Sounds like some good AoE damage there. Flame Break has been updated. Fire damage is increased by 8% instead of 15. Raptor Swipe damage increased by a big number. Flame Patch's cooldown is now 60 seconds instead of 30 because of the change to Boomstick's cooldowns. And then they got rid of these. They said Wildfire Tower was removed, but they just updated it. That's interesting. So, on paper, based on what I know, these seem okay, but Survival Hunter experts let me know. Alright, Frostfire, Elemental Conduit, now gets 2% haste, was 10% increased critical strike damage. Probably okay. And then Flash Freeze Burn has been updated, no longer reduces the cooldown of Combustion or Ray of Frost, now grants Frostfire empowerment from casting Combustion or gaining 5 icicles. Okay. Alright, Spellslinger. Splinters have become significantly easier to generate while remaining powerful, especially for arcane mages, so reducing their frequency and power while also adding some non-splinter based damage hooks to ensure your frost and arcane core spells are contributing meaningfully to your damage. I like this. I hate hero talents that are the entire damage kit. Look at you, Brewmaster Monk. So they reduced the splinter damage by 50% for both frost and arcane. Splinting Orbs has got a reduction from 4 splinters to 2. Arcane Orb and Frozen Orb cooldown reduction was 1/4 of a second now instead of 1/2 a second. Infused Splinters, it's got a reduction from 25 to 15% to apply a stack of freezing. Polish Focus now increases Arcane Barrage and Shatter damage by 15%. Then Signature Spell has been updated, increases these spells by 15%. So, Spellslinger, I've never played Spellslinger on my Frost Mage. I've always played Frostfire, so I don't know what this does. And then for Sun Fury, Execution has been updated. Increased Pyroclasm's damage by a bonus 30%. Immediate grants Pyroclasm, so a little buff to Fire Mage Sun Fury. Alright, some class talent changes. Hot Streak, Clear Casting, and Brain Freeze increase your intellect by 1% for 8 seconds, and multiple applications may overlap. I actually kind of like stuff like this, stuff that increases your primary stat for just kind of doing your rotation correctly. I think is like a really cool thing, because it kind of gives you an idea of like, you know, some of it is RNG, yes, because like all of these things are procs, so you have to like proc big. But I think if you do proc big, then it allows you to feel a little bit more extra powerful. Alright, Improved Spell still repeats its effect after 4 seconds, but now there's a cooldown of 4 seconds. I don't understand that. Improved Counterspell prevents casting for an additional 1 second. Fine. Improved Remove Cursed. Also cast it on yourself, but its cooldown is increased by 20 seconds, so you can remove 2 curses at a time if you have yourself. These are all niche so far. Mana Confluence. Your mana costs are reduced by 5%. Like, only Arcane kind of cares about that. After casting Blink, it is replaced for the Reflection for 8 seconds. It'll teleport you back to where you last blinked. Choice note against spatial manipulation. Okay, it's like a second alter time. Sure. Okay. I don't even know what to think about that. Incantation of Swiftness got a movement speed reduction. Cone of Cold got a cooldown increase, and then reduplication has been removed. For Arcane, Eureka's now a 1-point talent. Big Brain has been removed, so you kind of wash out your talent points there. Alright. Fire Mage. So I've been wanting to dabble into Fire Mage again with the initial changes. Like, I kind of saw that they pulled a lot of power out of, like, Combust Window. Good Combust Window, you're God. Bad Combust Window, you're useless. To try and make it a little bit more steady. But I haven't been following them, and I know a lot of mages were not happy with the initial fire changes, so let's read their dev note. The goal with the following changes is to further reduce the baseline power of Ignite while also adding some more power to Master of Flame. Additionally, we're making Meteor easier to access to increase its appeal in lower target count scenarios. And lastly, they're adjusting Fired Up to be able to trigger regardless of combustion to help create more excitement and add some more power outside of your burst cooldown. Good. We've also adjusted a third node to help retain the feel and excitement of combustion with Fired Up's previous iteration. We appreciate your feedback. Alright. So Fire Blast deals additional damage to up to 8 nearby enemies with the new conflag. New Burnout. When combustion expires, all of your activated knights explode, dealing 50% of the remaining damage. So you're getting burst off of the end of your burst. Interesting. Pyro Mastery. Pyro Blast damage increased by 5%, and its size increased by 15%. Choice of Mark of the Fire Lord, which is Meteor and Flame Strike dealing increased damage. So basically, like, hey, like, the size increase thing is weird. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. But it's either more single target damage or more AoE damage. Cool. And then you just get a flat 3% fire damage to health increase. Fired Up has been updated. The first node, so this is their Apex talent, no longer requires combustion. It's just a flat 20% chance to proc, and now increases damage by 4% versus 5. Increases your fire damage by 36%, so a total of 9% extra fire damage. Then combustion significantly increases your chance to gain Fired Up, reducing each time you gain Fired Up. Additionally, Fired Up now extends combustion's duration by 1 second. Okay, I think those are probably good changes to the way to make the node, again, to make it less, like, CD heavy. Jesus, it's got a long way to go here. Alright, Ignition has been updated. Fire Blast now spreads 50% of your target's Ignite versus 100. Again, with them trying to remove some impact on Ignite, that's probably a good thing. Master of Flame. Oh wait, so they took 50% of the power out and then it put it into another talent. That's stupid. Not triggered from Pyro Blast, Flame Strike, and Fireball damage. Okay, cool. More sources, never a bad thing. Now, a 2-point talent reduces combustion's cooldowns by 60 seconds. That may pull it out of you talenting it, or it makes it more mandatory, one of the two. Fervent Flickering gives you an additional Fire Blast charge and increased Fire Blast damage by 25%. Now, again, I haven't kept up. Are you still at 3 charges, or are they now getting a 4th? Flame On has been updated, no longer a 2-point talent. Now grants 1 additional Fire Blast charge and reduces its cooldown by 2 seconds. I'm assuming those are a choice node. You choose either more damage or more often. Meteor has been updated to no longer deal damage to the enemy closest to the center baseline. Cool. Deep Impact has been updated, causing Meteor to deal 50% increased damage to the enemy closest to the Meteor's center. Okay. Okay, that makes sense. But then they also get a 15-second CD off of Meteor, which is good. Feel the Burn. Duration reduced to 6 seconds versus 8. And Mastery Gain was reduced to 3 seconds, so small nerf to that. Pyromaniac returned to the Fire Tree. Flame Strike got just a flat buff. Fireball damage just got a flat buff. Meteor got moved up. Molten Fury now moved up. And then they removed Firefall. Basically, to avoid problems with Fire Frost. And then Flame Blast and Surging Blaze is gone. For Frost Mage, Frigid Focus has been casted. It now increases Barrier Frost damage by 30% versus 100, so they nerfed that. Fingers of Frost has been updated, now causes your next Ice Lance to shatter the maximum number of freezing stacks. Ice Lance is capable of shattering without consuming the freezing stacks. Cool. Freezing duration increased to 15 seconds versus 8. That's very good quality of life. Comet Storm now replaces Ray of Frost. I'm assuming that's in the talent tree. And then many issues with Mastery, Freeze, and Shatter have been fixed. So good. Yeah, I know there was a lot of bugs with it. So good for Frost Mages. I want to see it. It's been so long since Frost Mage has been the meta spec for Mage in its tier. I would love to see it come back one time. Alright, Master of Harmony. Got their new talent tree row. So Harmonic Surge, casting Thunder Focus T, Celestial Brew / Infusion, guarantees that your next 2 cast from target palm of Vivify / Shaylin's Gift, I'm assuming, will cause Harmonic Surge, dealing nature damage split between your targets and all nearby enemies, and healing up to 5 injured allies. That's kind of interesting because, like, Thunder Focus T and Celestial Brew are already how you trigger Master of Harmony. Interesting. Casting Kick Smash, Rising Sun Kick, or Rushing Wing Kick causes your next target palm or Vivify to release a Harmonic Surge. Cool. New talent for Zenith. So for Brewmaster, this will make it so that Blackout combo increases target palm damage by an additional 50%, and Keg Smash Brew cooldown reduction by an additional 1 second. Press the advantage's nature damages was increased by 50%, and its cooldown reduction increased by an additional 25%. So they're kind of really leaning heavily into Master of Harmony being the single target spec talent for Brewmaster, and for Mistweaver, like, getting a lot of value out of Tiger Palm. You kind of set up your, I'm assuming, your Fistweaving playstyle. Especially with Zenith now giving you additional 50% damage to healing on Ancient Teachings. That's pretty good. Brewmaster Shadowpand are getting some changes. Stand Ready, Weapons of the Wall, and Wisdom of the Wall are activated by Evoker Zhao. And Vision Training now reduces the cooldown of Invoker Zhao. Cool. Alright, so a bunch of tuning knobs going out here for Mistweaver. So Amplified Rush is getting increased by 50%. That's a new talent, so it makes the healing of Gust of Mist caused by new mists increased by 50%. So that's going to be good for like a more raid-oriented build. Restore Balance has been redesigned. Now increases healing done while Yu'lon and Chi-Chi are active by 5%. That's just a good talent, period, I think. Yu'lon's Whisper Healing has been increased by 100%, to give it more efficacy and raid, I think. Celestial Harmony no longer grants 2 instant cast Enveloping Mists, and instead reduces Enveloping Mist cast on by 60% while Yu'lon is present. Ooh, that's kind of rough, but whatever, it's fine. I think, probably. Jade Bond no longer causes Enveloping Mist from Spirit Font's Chi Cocoons. Oh, that's probably a good balancing change. It's probably broken. Spirit Font's Chi Cocoons now scale their effectiveness based on the amount of Soothing Mist cast by Spirit Font. Kind of hate that, but probably good for the health of Spirit Font. Shaylin's Gift's Clouds now increase the healing of Shaylin's Gift by 50% per stack versus 100. Yeah, it was like full healing people. It was crazy. Like from 1 HP to full. Like it would do that on like today's. Like that version of Shaylin's Gift would heal a tank sitting at 1 HP with Fortifying Brew. Like I've gotten up to like almost 40 million HP. It would heal that shit in full. Like it was that powerful. It was crazy. Invigorating Mists now increases the primary healing of Shaylin's Gift by 500%. Cool. Big buff to that talent. Chi-Chi's Gust of Mist are now 50% effective to regular Gust of Mist. Also probably a good thing. Fixed issue that was causing Soothing Mist to still activate Gust of Mist. Okay, bug fix, fine. And fixed inertia cause Japered Serpent statues passive talent to prevent the statue from healing. Ah, that's fun. Then Refreshing Jade Wind, Spearhand Strike, Tea of Plenty, Tea of Serenity, and Energy. Like, all of these, except Spearhand Strike, obviously, I'm sad about that. But, like, the other 4 talents, good. We never used them. Alright, Paladins. Class that I've been leveling. I leveled a lot on Remix. New talent, Masterwork. After casting a Holy Armament, your next 3 abilities cast a lesser armament of the same kind on a nearby ally. Cool. Divine Toll Holy Armaments activate Hammer and Anvil at 100% effectiveness. Nice. That's good row here, it sounds like. When your Holy Bulwark absorbs damage or your Sacred Weapon deals damage or healing, you have a chance to gain Grand Crusader or Awakening. That's actually kind of nice for looking at from a prop Paladin standpoint, which is the only spec I know. Hammer and Anvil's healing effect now has a 30-yard radius and a cap of 5 targets, but bigger radius, target cap probably fine. And then Hammer and Anvil move locations. Cool. Alright, Holy Paladin. Let's talk into this healer, the one that, outside of Priest, the one I probably know, well, it's the one I know, like, something about, but it's the spec that I've, like, always been curious to try, but never been able to commit to, because I like the melee-den style, and it hasn't really been the vogue lately. Alright, define Holy Light's position within the kit as a high-powered, always available single-target nuke that is limited by mana expenditure. Previously have been tied behind too many modifiers that we felt restricted its use too heavily on top of its mana cost and cast time. Additionally, we're continuing to condense Holy Paladin's aura tracking by redesigning Unending Light, removing Power of the Silver Hand, removing Blessing of Anshe, redesigning Shining Righteousness. We've also added tuning knobs to several pieces of the Holy Paladin kit that were not previously tunable without affecting the baseline power of the spell. Experimenting with a bit of a Call of the Righteous tuning, as we didn't feel that Master Gold offered a reasonable trade-off for power and the power of reducing the cooldown of Avenging Wrath and adding functionality to make it a savior that rewarded healing to render. Alright, so basically they're trying to do a bunch of power shifting. Alright. When Avenging Wrath is not active, you gain 5% mastery. When it is active, you gain 30% movement speed. Alright. As an outsider on paper, that actually sounds kind of neat. Divine Overload. Holy Light's healing is increased by 30%, but its mana cost is increased by 20%. If it works well as the goal to be like, hey, I've got time to put a nuke on this person, but I need to heal them up quick, then, or not, I need to heal them big, but I've got time to do it, then that talent can be really good. Increases the healing of Holy Shock by 15%. Cool. I like Holy Shock heavy playstyle, so I'm down. Reduces the mana cost of Holy Light, reduces its cast time by 20%. So Divine Overload, in combination with Divine Favor, might be, if it's not a choice node, could be a nice little combination there. Unending Light, and also makes you a little bit more desirable for haste, I'm assuming. Divine Favor now reduces the mana cost of Holy Light, or excuse me, Unending Light has been redesigned, now increases the benefit of Line of Dawn received from Lightbringer by 20%. So it just makes your AoE cone heal better. Cool. Holy Shock increased by 20%. Holy Light increased. Divine Toll and Rising Sunlight now cast Holy Shock at 60% effectiveness. Beacon of Savior's 2-point talent now increases the amount of healing allies with Beacon of the Savior receive. Okay. Walk into the Night only generates Holy Power. Nice. Hand of Divinity no longer increases the healing of Holy Light, considering they added 2 new talents to do that. Makes sense. Same with the Fusion of Light, no longer empowers Holy Light. Interesting. So, what are you going to use Infusion for? And the Divine Revelations no longer mentions Holy Light. Cool. Alright. Shining Righteousness now increases the Shield of Righteousness' chance to activate Divine Purpose. Fine. I mean, if you play it right, then you could probably get a lot of shields off, so that's good. Call of the Righteous now decreases the duration of Avenging Wrath by 8 seconds, and decreases the duration of Crusader by 5 seconds. So just got a little bit of a nerf on the duration decreases there. Sanctified Rod no longer decreases the cooldown of Holy Shock, but increases the duration of Avenging Wrath. Okay. Or Mastery is now connecting to Unending Light. Fine. I don't know the talent tree. That means nothing to me. Tyrion's Devotion now reduces the cooldown of Lay on Hands by 30%, so a nerf there. Hand of Divinity, that's a nerf. And Hammer of Wrath not to function with Infusion of Light, so bug fix. And then they remove Power of the Silver Hand, Punishment, and Rebuke. Neato. Alright. Priest. Very little notes here. Shadow apparently was doing way too much damage. It took a 25% aura nerf. That's fucking wild. Alright. Subtlety Rogues. A spec that I've always been curious to try, but I hate cooldown stacking. This new changes to Subtlety's most iconic ability, Shadow Dance, are intended to help address concerns about the cooldown cadence. We recognize these are minor changes that do not solve all problems. More changes in future patches. Alright, cool. So Divinity Shadows have been redesigned. Shadow Dance duration increased by 100% of your haste. Interesting. Shadow Dance cooldown reduced to 30 seconds versus 45. And duration was increased to 8 seconds versus 6. And then Improved Shadow Dance was removed because they kind of baked those effects into Shadow Dance baseline. I love when they do this. They should do this for every improved X talent. So, sounds like they are like starting off by making it 8 seconds, and then you can get up to 16 seconds, basically, depending on what your haste levels are. So that's interesting. We'll see. I'll have to ask someone that knows Subtlety Rogue. Alright. Grandma Grandpa Restoration. Ancestors summoned by Unleashed Life instead of Healing Tree Totem. Or summoned by Unleashed Life instead of Healing Tree Totem again. Surging Totem reduced by 5 seconds. Reactivity's been renamed as Split Stream. And Split Stream increases the Healing Tide Totem healing. Primal Catalyst affects Healing Tide Totem. Earth Surge is no longer separate aura. It's been merged into Earth Living. So some small little adjustments for Restoration Shamans here, on top of getting a 30-second kick. For your hero talents, probably just meant to balance out a couple of little things. I know right now Farseer is the play, but with the removal of the tier set bonuses, we'll see what they do with with Totemic on this. Maybe go back to that playstyle in the future. Alright. Class tree talents. Static Charge is a 2-point talent, which gives Capacitor Totem reduced CDR by 15 seconds. It's probably okay. Brimming with Life is a 2-point talent now. Stamina is increased by 10% while you're at full health. Ankh cooldowns much faster. Probably okay. I'm not sure. I don't like stuff increasing to 2-point talents. Alright. Winds of Alakir is now a 2-point talent, so you get 6% movement speed and 10% in Ghost Wolf. And then Therazine's Resilience and Reactive Boarding are now a choice node in the class tree instead of being in the Resto tree. Totemic Surge no longer reduces the cooldown of Surging Totem, Winter's Totem, Healing Tide Totem. Or what is Totemic Surge? Just point that. Alright. Alright, Resto Shamans. You're getting some dev attention here. Alright, so they made some changes that the Resto Shamans are extremely unhappy about. Let's see what they do, and if you're a Resto Shaman fun man, let me know, or fun woman, fun person, let me know. Alright, we are adding Unleash Life back to the Restoration Tree with some minor tweaks to its functionality. We want normal spellcast to be impactful, but being able to respond according to the situation with a short cooldown allows for fun and rewarding gameplay. We're taking a look at Ascendance, feels a good opportunity to bring its functionality for some fresh gameplay. So Healing Surge is not back, but they are bringing back Unleash Life. So basically what it does, it heals a friendly target and then increases the healing of your next main healing spell on them by 25% and reduces the cast time on them. So sounds like there's no cooldown on this, so you could potentially unleash life on a few targets to set up like a badass chain heal. Maybe. Tell me, Resto Shaman, I have no fucking clue how your spec works. Unleash Life, healing increased by 30%, now it's a 20-second... Okay, so it does have a cooldown, so... Can't do that, never mind. Should just read notes. Works. Earthen Accord, Unleash Life heals 30% more, and its bonus healing effect is increased by 20%. Okay. Alright, transform into a Water Ascendant. Immediately healing nearby allies while ascended, casting Riptide causes your next healing wave or chain heal to be instant. They apply Riptide to your target, and all healing is increased by 30%. So basically what I could see you doing is, like, you Riptide yourself, and then you chain heal all your targets that you want to hit here. So, potential gameplay loop there. And then they just did some Aura tuning to Healing Wave, Chain Heal, Riptide, Wind Shear Course cooldown increase. Earth Living's periodic is now visible on the raid frames, and then Storm, Streams, Totem increase. So, Resto Shamans, let me know what you think. To me, this sounds like maybe a start on paper, but you guys obviously will know more than me. Alright. Hellcaller, Wrath of the Wild Shaper has been renamed to Through the Fellvine. And then Thorgrim's Iniquity has been renamed to Alzin's Iniquity. Affliction, Seeds of their Demise now has a chance to grant Shard instability, was Tormented Crescendo. So, just some name change stuff. Sure. Alright, so they made some adjustments to the class tree that had some NYIs and now implemented them. So Infernal Beneficiary now causes Drain Life to heal your primary demon at 400% effectiveness instead of 100. Probably good for soloing and Delve folks, but kind of useless otherwise. Blight of the Weakness now turns into Blight of Exhaustion while Pack of Exhaustion is active, which calls forth a cloud of mist that envelops the target and all enemies within 10 yards, reducing their movement speed by 80% for 12 seconds. But Blight of Weakness now turns into Blight of Tongues while Pact of Tongues is active. Reduces the cast time of all spells, so some group utility. And then, of course, they moved talent trees around. So, Warlocks, play with that. Let me know what you think. Alright, Warriors. Now, the last one we're going to dive deep into here. Thank you for sticking around for almost a fucking hour, by the way. Decimator. Demolishes Final Strike, applies deep wounds to all targets at 100% effectiveness. Good. I like that talent, actually. I've been worried about how they're going to keep Colossus competitive with Mountain Thing, with some of the changes that they've made. Particularly for Prout Warrior. For Arms Warrior, you're using Colossus a lot right now for Myth Plus. I wouldn't hate to see it sometimes switch up, though, where Colossus actually has some good single target play. Water Strike Shield Slam increases the critical strike of your rend and deep wounds damage by 50% for 8 seconds. Of course, both Arms and Fury, or Arms and Prot are heavy crit specs right now, so cool. And then Celeritas Conclusion. Demolishes Final Strike, grants 10% haste for 10 seconds, and increases critical strike chance even if mortal strike shield slam by 100%. I like that. I like that a lot. Mountain Thane. Storm Surge. Avatar increases the damage of Thunderclap by 50% and reduces cooldown by 50%. So basically they took the talent that used to be in the class tree and moved it into the Mountain Thane tree. Since only Fury and Prot now have Avatar. Conductivity. Lightning strike damage increased by 10%. Critical strike damage increased by 10%. Fine. Passive, whatever. During Avatar, Thunderblast extends Avatar's duration by 2 seconds. Interesting. So you can try to push how long your Avatar goes up. Alright. For Slayer, Violent Euphoria. Bladestorm puts you into a battle trance, granting you 50% haste for 8 seconds after you stop bladestorming. I like. Deadly Focus. Executioner's duration is increased by 6%. Or 6 seconds, rather. That's actually really good for arms in particular. Unhinge. Every 2 strikes of Bladestorm, you automatically cast a Mortal Strike or Bloodlust at the target or a random enemy nearby. So the question that I have is, when we're talking every 2 strikes, are we talking like every tick that it does damage to all the targets, or every time? Like if you have 4 targets and you hit it one, and it ticks and it hits them once, does that count as 2 per, like the first 2 targets are 2 and then 2 and 2 to get that Mortal Strike or Bloodthirst at all those targets? That's my question. Obviously we'll probably need to test that. If it's what I hope it is, then that is really good. If it's not what I think it is, then it's less good, but still probably good enough to give Slayer some potential AoE impact. Slayer's Dominance has been updated. Slayer Strike now grants you a stack of Executioner, increasing your execute damage by 3% for 12 seconds. Cool. Combined with Deadly Focus, obviously now you're getting 18 seconds on that, so it just allows you to maintain that buff a lot better. Show No Mercy has been updated. Unrelenting Onslaught has also been updated, so Executioner now increases your execute critical strike chance and critical strike damage by 3% per stack. Cool. So they're building in a lot of extra built-in crit chance so that you don't necessarily have to be heavy crit stacking. You can do more stat spreading. Unrelenting Onslaught has been updated. Using Execute causes you to both reduce the cooldown of Bladestorm by 3 seconds and apply 1 stack of Overwhelm to your primary target for each stack of Execution. Cool. I like that too. Alright. Class talent trees. Alright. Field Dressing. Healing received decreased by 3%, and all self-healing is increased by an additional 10%. So it makes your impending victories even better. And then you just get a flat better healing on you. Probably going to be really good for Prot Warrior. Probably less so for the DPS specs. Fearless. Cooldown of Berserker Rage is reduced by 50%. Berserker Rage removed all movement speed and parrying effects. Choice now with Berserker Shout. So that's probably more PvP focused. Javelineer. Stormbolt, Shattering Throw, Wrecking Throw, and Champion Spear apply hamstring to all effective targets, reducing their movement speed. Potentially good in some Mythic Plus scenarios, depending on situation, but I think it's more PvP. Champion Spear has been redesigned. Let's read the developer's note first before we read the change. Previous iteration was an experiment to see if a softer version of a pull-in effect would be useful. They don't feel it was a success, so they're trying another approach for Champion Spear that leans into natural mobility and providing a new tool for engagement or gap closing. So you now throw a spear at the target location, chaining all enemies in the area to the spear's location and dealing physical damage instantly. And additional physical damage over 6 seconds. While spear is active, you can activate the ability again to leap to the spear, slam down, dealing physical damage to all targets, and then all damage reduced, and it generates 10 rage. So the question that I have is, do you have to have a minimum range on this like you do with charge? Because if you do, that's kind of ass. If you don't, you can be in melee with everything, throw the spear, and then slam down on it again. I think that would be good. Hopefully that's the version that we get. Alright. Intimidating Shout. Enemies other than the primary target are no longer figured in place, but flee from the warrior. However, the movement speed is reduced by 70%. Now on a choice with Piercing Howl. Okay. They're experimenting with the iconic shouts to give them more utility in more situations. We're adding a snare to Intimidating Shouts to make it less risky to use in a dungeon and open world content. Positioning as Piercing Howl with a similar snare, but a movement speed buff for allies. We're interested to see when they use it to come up with his abilities. Break our game. That's what they're saying. Honed Reflexes. Now additional effects. Self interrupting an enemy increases damage deal to them by 5% for 10 seconds. Cool. So that probably makes this now mandatory in Mythic Plus builds particularly. Excuse me. Rallying Cry increases. Our Battlefield Commander's been updated to now give Rallying Cry More health when you rally cry and increases duration by 3%, which no longer gives movement speed or leech, because they slam that into the intimidating shout, I think. And then Berserker Shout just gets 100% radius increase, which I think is more than what the 8 yards was, so that's probably a buff. Barbaric Training's been updated. Slam, Whirlwind, Thunderclap damage increased by 10%, but critical strike damage is increased by 5%, and it is a 2-point talent. I hate that. Thunderclap now automatically applies Rend to 5 targets if talented into Rend. Crushing Force is now a 2-point talent. Okay, so they basically remove Blood and Thunder and put it into the baseline thing of Rend. Interesting. Okay. Crushing Force now 2-point talent. Sure. So they moved Cacophonous Roar, Gust of Blow, Death Strikes, Menace, and then Bloodborne no longer requires Bloodthirst to critically strike. All targets hit by Bloodthirst will take an additional damage from your bleeds. Cool. Okay. This change I'm probably okay with. So, yeah, that's a lot going on here. So, my thoughts for Warrior is I think these are all probably just good changes, probably more little things than anything else. Champion Spear, obviously the big one, and Intimidating Shout, the other big one. Trying to give Warrior more group capabilities to help with potential Mythic Plus viability, although right now I think they're really good. So we'll see. From the talent tree changes, I like what they've done with Slayer to give it a little bit more, like they focus the single target, but then they get this like really nice AoE talent on top of Pray for the Weak. So potential for Slayer to potentially see its way in. I really like the Colossus change here to give you the haste. Big fan of that. So Mountain Dange stuff is kind of whatever, honestly. I don't really care. As for the other classes that I'm looking at potentially playing, not a lot going on for Druid here. These new talents from a bear perspective I think are good for Loon's Chosen. I think they've done the right thing by trying to reintegrate Maul and Raise. I like the Druid of the Claw stuff from the perspective of bear. I don't know what I think about it from the perspective of Feral yet. I'll have to think on it more. And then the Havoc stuff, I like their Apex talent for Havoc. And the Eldrazi Reaver stuff I think is going to help make Vengeance's Eldrazi Reaver setup a little bit more fluid to play, to the point that you could potentially even remove Spirit Bomb out of the equation and just play Soul Cleave, which would be kind of nice to only have one Fury Spender that you have to dump everything into. So let me know what you think about your class talents. This will all be kind of chaptered out and stuff like that. If you like this content, remember to like, share, subscribe. Until the next video, hope you all stay safe. Hope you enjoy yourself. You're having fun. You keep on gaming. We'll see you next time.